All right, now we're joined by Scott Lindsay, who's running for city attorney. So go ahead with a 2-minute introduction.
Great. Thank you for having me. Right now, in King County Jail, over 2/3 of the misdemeanor defendants who have been repeatedly arrested over the last several years are sitting there suffering from homelessness or substance use disorder. Right? In the last 8 years, our city attorney's office has made no significant progress in changing the outcomes for that population. And that the challenge that the city faces from those who are suffering from substance use disorders and homelessness has grown exponentially over that time. We have a real crisis on our hands, and it's impacting us on the streets, and of course, those who are stuck in a cycle of criminal justice involvement without ever getting the behavioral health or social service interventions that they need. We know that there are programs out there that work. We've seen those, we've experimented with those for the last several years at the county level with the LEAD program, and we also know from our peer cities that there are ways to reduce incarceration and improve public safety. But here in Seattle, at the misdemeanor level, which is 80% of the crimes in the city, we are not making any significant progress. For the last 3 years, I served as public safety advisor to Mayor Ed Murray, and in that capacity, I dove directly into the intersection of public safety, addiction, and homelessness. I know that our system is failing us, and if you ask anyone from the police officers to those who are stuck in the system, to public defenders, to I think the Seattle Municipal Court judges themselves, they will say the same thing. After 8 years of leadership in this space, and the city attorney is the titular leader here of the entire municipal criminal justice system, nothing has changed. It's time for new leadership, and I think I can bring that.
All right, thank you. So now we have our 4 prepared questions. They're actually right in front of you if you want to turn them over and read them along as we read them aloud. These are 2-minute answers. And John, we start with number 1.
What should the city attorney do to complete the Department of Justice reforms affecting our police department?
Great. So my first job for Mayor Ed Murray was as Special Assistant for Police Reform. And in that capacity, this was my job, which was to work with the City Attorney's Office, Chief Kathleen O'Toole, the men and women of the Police Department, the Federal Monitor, and the Department of Justice to get the city on track in implementing the consent decree reforms. And in fact, if you recall, from the prior era in which there was really a contested relationship between DOJ, the Monitor, and the Mayor's Office and SPD, we have had a wholesale turnaround. And I was involved in that. There are many, many who take credit or deserve proper credit. But the city attorney's role here is to really serve as the guide that keeps this on track and make sure that we stay in compliance. Now, the city attorney was an early leader, Pete Holmes was an early leader on police reform. And going back to 2009, 2010, he gets a lot of appropriate credit for that. But recently, he and I have differed a lot on this. And so just this past Friday, he said, or the Friday before that, he sent a letter trying to restrict the role of the Community Police Commission in ways that I just fundamentally disagree with. And his style here, which is to, after 3 years of debate on police reform, at the last minute, try and go back to fundamental principles and raise and restart the debate, I think is very unproductive. And that's why I have the support of leaders from the Community Police Commission, and I think I'll have a lot of support from others who are on the inside of the police reform process. The city has done a dramatic job to turn the ship around and actually get our police to begin to be a model of 21st century policing, but we need to do more to close this out, and I think it's going to take fresh leadership to do that.
Great. Clayton, number 2.
Do you support the city's current policy on homeless encampment sweeps? If so, why? If not, what would you do differently?
I absolutely reject the policy of the city on homeless encampment sweeps as they occurred for 20 years up and through when I started to really engage in this process and work to reform it. This is one of the toughest issues that the city faces, which is why the mayor tasked me with bringing about a fundamental change in the way that we address people living unsheltered in public spaces. When I became engaged in that issue about a year ago, I started a process and I said, listen, and these were my recommendations to the mayor, which are now in stone as of 1 month ago, that we cannot remove anyone in an unauthorized encampment in public space unless we are able to offer them a real, safe alternative place to go. And then I created what we're calling the navigation team, which pairs police officers with specially trained, and police officers who are specially trained with outreach workers to help get people out of very dangerous conditions, sometimes near freeway entries or exits where they are subject to death or put others in harm's way because of where they live or how they might live. Get them out, but get them out in a compassionate way and make sure that we are able to offer real alternatives. And what we found is that very often those living unsheltered were not interested in going into traditional emergency shelter situations, which is why we said, okay, we need to do something different. And I was a leader on this. We need to offer them authorized encampment locations or other low barrier options, because I'll tell you guys, 80%, and this is according to our outreach workers, 80% of those who are living in unauthorized encampments, the most problematic unauthorized encampments that in public space in the city of Seattle, are suffering from substance use disorder. So it's important that we give them low barrier options.
Great. David, number 3.
Should the city change its approach to prosecuting misdemeanor offenses? If not, why? If so, how?
100% yes, and that is the crux of my campaign. Folks, over the last 8 years, nothing fundamentally has changed. We have reduced prosecution in some areas, like driving with a suspended license, 3rd degree, an area that I agree with Mr. Holmes over. But fundamentally, for shoplift, for car prowl, for all of the other offenses that are keeping people, again, with substance use disorders and suffering from homelessness stuck in a criminal justice cycle, we have not changed the way that we prosecute those cases. And in fact, some of the solutions that we have available to us have been dramatically underutilized by the city attorney's office. For example, the LEAD program, which we know can work to actually divert people out of the criminal justice system before they get into it. If somebody is arrested today here on Dexter Avenue for car prowl and they're suffering from homelessness and substance use disorders, they will enter into the King County Jail. They will be prosecuted by the city attorney's office. They will not get any treatment options available to them, and they will cycle back out of the jail with no change to their behavior. And there is nobody who touches on the criminal justice system right now, from the police officers to the prosecutors or the public defenders, who actually think it's working. We need leadership and vision here. And again, you guys are the judges. You feel this in your neighborhoods, and you have a window into this, into how it's working. It's not working. And if something's not working, my question to you and my press to you is, do we continue on the same course? Pete Holmes has had 8 years. He's not presented new ideas on how to approach this very significant social policy challenge for the city of Seattle.
Liz, number 4.
How would you respond in the event of a federal crackdown on marijuana?
Yeah, well, and Pete Holmes, of course, gets credit for early leadership here. I spent 3 years in Washington, D.C. as senior counsel to the House Oversight Committee Democrats and Representative Elijah Cummings in day-to-day combat with the proto-Trump Republicans from the House Oversight Committee, the Darrell Ices, the Jason Chaffinses. This is all we did, and I'm very proud of what Representative Cummings continues to do as the biggest single thorn in the side of President Trump. We need true leadership to resist the Trump administration. And I want to give a specific example here, because I don't think that the city attorney is currently providing that. When we had the Muslim ban put in place. My wife and I were the first, besides Jorge Barron, the president, the executive director of the Northwest Immigrant Rights Projects, we were the first to CTAC, and we were on the inside, not on the outside to watch protests, on the inside, actually getting people out of baggage claim, getting people stopped. My wife was literally able to stop an Emirates flight to make sure that nobody was deported on her watch. She's a port commissioner for the Port of Seattle. That's the kind of hands-on, on-the-ground leadership. By contrast, the mayor had to, and look at the press release, direct the city attorney to file the lawsuit opposing opposing the Trump administration's effort to restrict funds into sanctuary cities. The mayor had to direct that. And then the mayor went to the attorney general, Bob Ferguson, to actually ask him what outside law firm to hire to do the lawsuit. Okay? That's not the kind of leadership that I witnessed by Congressman Cummings in Washington, D.C., and it's not the kind of leader I would be here. I think the city attorney should be an absolute frontline fighter in this fight, whether it's marijuana, whether it's supervised consumption sites, or sanctuary city status, or protecting our immigrants. He should be on the front lines, and I don't think that's happening right now.
All right, now we'll open up to follow-up questions. These are 1-minute answers, and we'll start with Ben.
So your reform ideas sound pretty good, but it also sounds like they would require extensive staff increases. How would these staff be paid? Who would oversee these projects? Where would this staff come from?
No. So there are real resources that are going to be required here, but I don't think that's fundamental. That's first and foremost in the city attorney's office. We should be funding programs and case managers and outreach workers, but not funneling more money into the city attorney's office. And this is a real difference between me and Mr. Holmes. So let me give you an example here. I believe that the LEAD program should be expanded to a citywide program and opened up to a wider set of offenses. Right now, it's basically restricted to drug offenses only, which are either felonies or gross misdemeanors. We should open that up so somebody who is suffering from substance use disorders gets the treatment they need if they commit a serious misdemeanor offense like car crime. But what we need to do is have a city attorney who goes and tells the story before city council and the mayor and advocates. And I've been on the inside. The city attorney right now is not presenting a vision that actually anybody in city council, the mayor's office are following. Nobody's following the city attorney's office on these core issues or listens to them about how to fund these programs.
All right, further questions? All right, follow-up questions. Further follow-up
That is a
questions.
coincidence.
Liz, did you have a question?
No, I just had a phone.
So I'll ask a follow-up question. So in your opening, you had said that 2/3 of the people in King County Jail, substance abuse issues, misdemeanors, and that the city attorney had done, I believe you used the word nothing about this issue. I know that he came in when marijuana was still illegal and did a 180 switch in policy and stopped prosecuting marijuana possession. Should he get credit for that, and what specifically should he have done after that to address this issue?
Absolutely. So in 8 years in office, Pete Holmes had a strong start, right? And in his first 2 years, he worked on marijuana legalization and created a number of other policy changes, like the DWLS3 policy change that mattered. So he had a good 2 years, and I think I'm not the only observer to feel this. The subsequent 6 years, he has become lackadaisical. He has not performed or presented a vision for change. And the city is changing all around us, and the social conditions that are driving misdemeanor crime in the city are dramatically changing. Seattle is getting slammed by the heroin epidemic, and Liz Campbell can tell you that and talk to you about that in Belltown, or Greenwood, or Aurora, or Finney Ridge, or Queen Anne. We are getting slammed by this, and that means we have to change and adapt our responses. Those words, heroin, opiate addiction, I've never heard them come out of Pete Holmes' mouth.
All right, Liz, do you have a question?
I was wondering, Scott, if you wanted to let people know about safe consumption spaces and some focus groups that you've been doing in the jail.
That's right. So, thank you, Liz.
You're welcome, Scott.
In my role as public safety advisor, I quickly discovered that, again, the vast majority of low-level criminal offenses were actually related to opiate addiction. And so I went and paired with the King County behavioral health specialists that fund our treatment programs. And I said, what do we need to do here? And they gave me a big list, and I actually proposed the creation of the Heroin and Opiate Addiction Task Force that the mayor and King County Executive Dow Constantine put together that had 40 folks. It proposed new prevention programs, treatment programs, and user health programs, including supervised consumption sites. I believe that supervised consumption sites are actually going to be a way to get people off of the streets where they're currently using, out of our parks where they're currently using, and out of our public restrooms, and into safer places where they can get some of the behavioral health interventions they need. I've actually then gone and road tested this and polled on this in the King County Jail, and the folks stuck there right now say they will use those supervised consumption sites instead of sidewalks, McDonald's restrooms, or parks, if they are available.
All right, further follow-up questions? Yeah, John?
I believe, is it true you're not participating in the voucher program
Yes,
this year?
it's
So
true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you talk about the decision, how you made that decision? I think in particular, it's the way some folks look at it is you come from a powerful political family in this state. So what does that say about our politics and the state of our politics in this region?
Well, let's step back. Pete Holmes had no challenger in 2013, and as of filing week, I am the only challenger to Pete Holmes this year. So the power discrepancy here is definitely in the favor of the incumbent. I supported the Democracy Voucher Program, but there are real challenges with how that comes about and how that plays out in this particular race. Democracy vouchers were distributed in January, and I didn't announce my candidacy until the very end of April, right? It also presents a real hurdle to collect those, and I want to actually be out there spending as much time as possible focusing on talking to voters about this message, which I think actually really resonates with folks, rather than collecting the democracy vouchers. This was a tough decision for me, and I was disappointed not to be able to use them here, but I did have to make a realistic decision about how I was going to spend my time as a candidate, and I want to focus on delivering this message rather than collecting vouchers.
All right, further follow-up questions? Time for one or maybe two more? I'll ask another one. So Pete Holmes has been very present, very visible in the community, very visible in the Democratic Party. I'm just wondering, what would your plan to be, other than the day-to-day operations of the City Attorney's Office, to maintain contact with the community?
Let me contest that a little bit. The premise here. Actually, I've spent a lot of time on the ground on tough public safety issues, and I have not seen Mr. Holmes present on those issues. And it's a repeat complaint that I get, that I've heard from council members and others, that Holmes is not showing up for the tough community meetings, facing tough issues. He may be coming to the LDs for sure, but he's not coming, he's not been active or present on these tough issues for the last several years at least. But I've spent a lot of time in the community, and if you ask anyone about my time in the mayor's office or about just my overall approach to how I do my work, I am a hands-on, on the streets type of guy. I don't want to make a decision, I don't want to change course or set a policy unless I experience it, see it, feel it for myself, and that's my approach. Jeff, let me just also say here that I have spent my life now, or my professional life, dedicated to democratic politics, democratic causes, and being a public servant. Did that in Washington D.C. and doing that here, and so that that is my purpose, my for being.
All right, so we're out of time. If you want to take 30 seconds for a closing statement.
You guys are important gatekeepers here. This race was otherwise going to be uncontested, and I am the only challenger to Mr. Holmes today. if you all want these issues explored in this race, I would ask that you present to your members, at the very least, a dual endorsement, but I would ask, of course, for your sole endorsement. There's an opportunity here to really explore these tough questions and to really dig a little deeper. If somebody's asking for a third term, you need to say, what have they really done over 8 years to show that they deserve it, and do they have that positive vision? I think I have an affirmative vision for how to take on these tough challenges. I'm not sure our incumbent does, at least I haven't seen it, and I don't know many people who could describe what it is. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.